Alright guys, here we are. We are going to be out in the woods this time. I'm going to use my chainsaw mill to mill out a log. I'm going to show you some of the little secrets I've learned along the way that I haven't really seen in too many other videos. And kind of show you the amount of time that it takes to get through one of these logs, which is a little bit more time than it would be at the sawmill, but it'll save you a couple of bucks in the meantime, and you get the pride of doing it all on your own. All right, here's the log we're gonna do. A little wider angle here. As you can see, this one end's pretty wide because it's got the crotch of the tree in it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna level that off a little bit with the saw out of the chainsaw mill and try to get them leveled off a little bit so the ladder will go on the log a little better. And as you can tell, there's some decent age in here, and I'm hoping there should be some decent lumber. Now, from the looks of it, it should be an oak log. I found this back in the woods. It had been laying down for some time before we bought the property. So the next time I come up here, we should be starting to cut. We're going to do one face cut, and then we're going to, or what will actually be the end of the boards, and then we'll start cutting off the face. And I'll explain that later. All right, well, we have our sides cut off, so the log will be level. So our next step is going to be to cut this side off, because this is going to be the face of our boards here, and this next side we're going to cut off is going to be the ends. And the main reason for doing that is we don't want to try to pull the bark side through the log. That'll just speed up how fast the chain will dull. So we're going to make this a straight cut, and we'll get at least one or two more cuts out before we have to start touching up the chain again, which I really hate doing. So just give me a second here, and we'll show you how we roll this log over, since it's such a big log and it's very wet. We usually use about the same process to pick the logs up with as well. So just a second. Okay, it's finally turned. I know I cut it off a little short. We were running a little trouble with it, but we did finally get it using the same method. There is another method I don't have an extra chain for. I'll show you again some other time. You just actually wrap the chain around. You would come out around this way and bring the hook to here if you're trying to flip it this way. And then you would pull from this side, and that would pull the log around. And then that's actually easier than the way I was doing it. If I had an extra chain, I would have done it that way. But everything's tied up right now down in the lower end. But the nice thing about the other method is you can just keep shimmying the chain around the log until you get it where you want it. It's a little easier. This way you get to pick the whole thing up. It's kind of a little bit safer, which brings me to another topic. Before you start doing any kind of cutting like this, I know I don't wear a helmet. You probably really should. You should at least have gloves on. I don't do that either all the time. Hearing protection, which I do have, earplugs, and safety glasses. And I just use my prescription ones, so I don't do everything I do, but I can give you some techniques to give you some ideas along the way. A pretty simple guy. We try to do things as simple as possible with very little interference from bigger, better, way more expensive items. So there you have it. Next time we come back, we're going to slice off what's going to be our end, or our sides of the boards, or ends of the boards rather, the edges rather, and then we're going to flip it back over and do the face and start actually slabbing boards out of there. And what we'll end up with is we will end up with one live edge, one cut edge, and that's just in case I do have a live edge project along the way. I at least have one side, and we might even get a few boards with two live edges. I'm not sure how it'll work out yet. We'll just see how it cuts, and hopefully we get something decent out of this. I don't know how long it's been in the ground, but the woodpeckers have been in it. Okay, here we are. We're going to actually mill this log here today. We're going to start with a cut on this side like we talked about, and then we're going to flip it over and start milling out the boards. Some of the things we're going to use are going to be these cedar shake shims. I know a lot of people use thicker shims, but I really don't want to lift the log that high, so we're going to keep it kind of level all the way through. To me, it seems like it works much better and things seem more accurate. We have some straps we're going to use to hold the ladder on. You'll see lots of videos where they drive the screws through, and the reason I don't use that method is because I really don't want a screw hole down through the center of my board. And this kind of forces me to remember to stop and put these wedges in. And down here's our mill. It's just one of the cheaper Walmart ones. I really bought it to kind of experiment with, and if I happen to like it and this one went to crap, I could just replace it with a better one later. But I wasn't sure it was something I was going to stick with. So the only thing you can't really see in the picture right now is the ladder, and I'll show you that in a minute. But I try to keep my logs at 8 foot. It's about a 1 minute time from start to finish. Even when I was milling locust, it was still only about a minute. And the ladder gives you a much smoother surface, and it's more true than using another board. The ladder's much longer, gives me a nice shelf to hang off of, so it's easier to start, easier to stop, and I can actually fuel the saw before I even take it back off the mill again, because you're going to go through gas pretty quick, especially in a saw this size here. So I'm going to pause the video for a minute, and I'm going to get started setting up, and then I'll bring you in when I got something more to show you besides just taking all this stuff off. All right, here we go. The ladder's up, and what we're going to try to do to get these boards, try to get the nicest look out of them, what I think seems to work, and several other people told me the same thing. We're going to try to make our cut level according to where the center of the log rings, the growth rings come to. So in this particular one, right about here, as best I could tell, because it's a crotch piece. And as you can see, there's like another little hump here too. So I'm going to say it's probably going to be about right here at this level, because I can see a big crack right here. So we're going to try to make it the same distance from here to here, and from the center down there to up. So that's the next thing we're going to do. I want to see what that distance is going to be. So right now, the top of the rungs here, we're looking at about 13 inches on this end. And here, it's just about the same. So really all we have to do is just shim this so it's stable, and it's already pretty much at the right level. And on this cut it's not so crucial because this is really just the side. Just wanted to kind of explain that process to you because it will become more important on this side, and you'll see because the center is not, it's much closer to this side, which will be our cut side, than it is to that side. So down there I haven't really looked at it yet, but right now we're talking about 5 inches. Down here at this end, we're looking at 11. So we probably aren't going to quite get all of it, but we're going to get it as close as we can and get something that will keep the grain nice and straight once the cut's made. And I'm really hoping this is going to look pretty nice once we get it out of here. So I'm going to go ahead and get this strapped down, and then I'll explain the supports better to you here in a minute. Solid process of just kind of tightening it down. And if you did notice, on my table is considerably shorter than the log is. We kept the straps that way, so that way when the saw gets to them, we can unhook them and move them around to this side of the saw to continue our cut. And at the same time we do that, we're going to stick these wedges in there just so they're snug, so the slab rather does not come back down on top of the log, pinching the saw off. And it'll keep that board nice and straight all the way through, so there'll be nothing to spring it up. Nothing that's going to push this ladder up, which is going to mess the cut up. There won't be any of that stuff. The strap idea seems to have worked pretty well for me. It takes maybe an extra second or two to use it. And like you can see, there's plenty sticking out here for the saw to rest on to start with. So I always go in a nice flat cut, and there's enough room for it to come out the other side where I can just let it sit. And if I want to fuel it that high, I never do. But if I want to, I can. You know. The next thing we have to do is make sure we're getting the thickness we want, and I'm usually doing 4/4 or 5/4. So what I'll do is I'll measure from the bottom of this ladder to the chain, and that will give me what I'm looking for. But for right now, I need to make sure I get through the center of this dips a little bit, so I want to make sure that I'm making a flat cut through that. So I'm going to go up here and measure what that is, and then I'm going to cut just a little bit deeper than that for the saw, so that way I get a straight cut all the way through, and it contacts both sides of the chains. And yep, you just noticed that I am not using the best thing in the world to that should work better. I'll show you what that is soon. Like I said, we try to keep it simple. All right, so we can take that measurement here. So to the bottom of the ladder, we're looking at less than an inch. So if I went ahead and set this up for 5/4, I would actually be able to do that and keep milling 5/4 boards. But this is the only oak log I got right now, and probably the only one I will have for a while. So we'll probably just go ahead and do 4/4 with that. That'll get me more out of it. I don't have any plans for any of this lumber just yet anyway. So let's go ahead and see where we're at here. So we need to make it just a hair thicker than what it is on that side. Here, ouch, very sharp chain. And there's at 3/4. So we're going to take my wrench here, and we're going to loosen this up, get this side where we want it, and then we'll get the far side right after we're done with that. Now this is going to want to go pretty quick, so hopefully we catch it before it does. There are some marks on here, but with the, you got to add the thickness of the ladder in, so it isn't going to drop much. All right. I also didn't see where it was. All right, we're right on an inch, right there. This has become one of my favorite things to do out here. I don't get to do it very often, and it's exhausting, but I love it. These are just U-bolts in here, if you've never used one of these. And you're going to want to make sure these are tightened evenly and not over-tighten them to where you crush this tube right here. If you crush that, you won't be able to adjust just those little bits. Like if you just want it, if I crush that right now and I decided I wanted a 5/4 board later on, it would always want to keep going back to that indent because you're not far enough out of it. So you want to be very careful with that. Same thing when you tighten it up on the chain, on the bar rather. You're going to want to make sure those bolts are tightened so the clamp comes up evenly. It's not so much the pressure on the bolt as much as it is the distance in there. You don't want to mess up your bar doing this either. So that's now set. I'll double check this one here. And actually we got it a little bit too low that time. So we need to come up. there we are, we're all set up now. And looks like we're ready to start milling. So what I'll do is I'll show you this cut in real time, and I'll show you the first face cut also in real time. And then we'll just, for the fun of it, we'll do a few in the time lapse. Just a second.